the BFA musical theater program was relatively new at the time, and so the majority of the training was built on acting, which for me was amazing. Like that's my favorite out of the 3 disciplines as it is. And so we got all the Shakespeare and Chekhov and the Greeks and Meisner and all that sort of stuff. As musical theater majors, we still got to learn, which is rare in a musical theater program. In the States, a lot of the times in the States, you have acting for musical theater. This for musical theater, it's separate from the acting majors because you obviously have to fill your courses with dancing and singing and all that sort of stuff. But it was great, and we did such a plethora of shows. Like,
ooh, good word. Yeah, ding, 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 ding. That's the word of the day, plethora.
Yeah, we weren't just like a musical theater school. We did, like, in my time there, I did Spring Awakening, a new work called Peter Piper, which was a tragedy, Iphigenia and Other Daughters. I did a cabaret series, and then I did my thesis, which was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So we did like a variety of shows, which was like you got to try what you really liked. And I love working with writers in new work, and I love devising, and that absurdist theater is some of my favorite theater. Like, we really got to try everything to then sort of land on what we actually wanted to do once we graduated.
You said your thesis performance was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. What makes a thesis performance over the other shows that you did?
So part of me going there, I was part of the honors college because they gave a nice scholarship. That was the only reason why I did it. But it was really great because as being in honors, you had to do a thesis. And if you were in the theater program, you got to do, or had the opportunity if you wanted to do a performance thesis. So a lot of the times, if it's one person running it, they do like a 20-minute devised piece. I was actually in my friend's thesis, which was a 20-minute devised piece, and it was super fun. But 8 of us got together and we're like, we want to do something bigger. Like, we want to not just do a 20-minute show. We want to actually put on a show. And so 8 of us went to the faculty and said, if we do one thesis performance and we all write our own individual papers, could we do that? And it was actually started by my friend Logan. They were the one who came up with the idea about what they wanted to do for their thesis. And then all of us were like, that's really cool. Can I sort of like glom onto that? Can I be a part of that? Because I have this idea. And then eventually 8 of us got approved, and we put on the whole show ourselves. 2 of us were the directors. I was the choreographer for movement pieces. We did the lighting design, the set design. Music was written by one of us or not music necessarily, but like sound was written and built for the show. So everything was done in-house by all of us. We painted the theater, we built the sets, everything.
Wow.
It took like a year and a half because you had to go through all the research for the paper essay part that everyone was like, I'll get to that. Even though that's like the whole point of the thesis, all the research and everything. And then we were also all in the show. So not only were we building it, but we were in it. So then we got into rehearsals and started doing it, because Cuckoo's Nest is roughly 2.5 hour show, and we cut it down to an hour and a half because they wouldn't let us do a 2.5 hour show. And we only had 8 actors, and we didn't want to go out of house to audition in our company for anyone else. We wanted it to be us. And so we cut characters and melded characters. We just sort of went chip chopped with the script and went, here you go. Here's our thesis.
That's amazing.
It was. Sorry, go ahead.
I should just clarify for Brandon. She said Cuckoo's Nest, not Cookie's Nest.
Thank you.
Well,
I mean, a Cookie's Nest. That kind of sounds.
yeah, that's One Flew Over the Cookie's Nest. That's a totally different show.
Yeah. And it was such a success and a hit because we did it gender bent. So we had a male Nurse Ratched and all female patients to sort of highlight oh my God, I'm not sounding smart at all, but to highlight the struggles that women or women identifying people still face in this society, and sort of how that comes across through this, just by switching the genders of the characters. We didn't even have to change. We had to change like references because it wouldn't make sense to use some references one would use against a man when it's a woman. So we had to change that stuff. But other than that, we didn't change any of the actual lines. And then you're just watching this and it's like so gross and creepy. And you're like, like why is this okay? And It was really well perceived too, which was the best part. Is what we wanted to get across, it got across, and we heard that from a lot of our faculty and students in the program, which was really great.
Awesome. Maybe for those people who are watching that necessarily maybe haven't gone to an art school or an acting school or aren't in the business at all, can you give a rundown of like what your actual classes were? Like what kind of classes did you go to?
Yeah, so I went to a liberal arts university, so I still had to do like one class in math in my 4 years there, one class of science in my 4 years there, just a random plethora of random courses that we had to achieve. But as for my program, we did acting every semester. We did voice and speech our sophomore year and our senior year. And sort of acting was broken down. So when you were a freshman, we started with contemporary, the easiest. And then as you went through the program, it got harder and harder. So then when you're a sophomore, you go to sort of check off that era where it's a little less sort of put in front of you. That's totally words. And then as we got into junior year, it was like Shakespeare and the Greeks, absurdist, anything that wasn't sort of contemporary, and then Chekhov and stuff. And then your senior year, you got to pick what you brought in. So it was all about your book and what are you going to actually use in an audition. And so we had classes strictly for acting technique, for dancing. They always said take at least one, if not two dance classes a semester. We took a voice class every semester. And then
sorry, was voice divided up between singing and like speech analysis and stuff like that?
Yeah, we had a vocal coach that was assigned to us our freshman year. I stayed with her all 4 years. She was amazing. Michelle Millardi, I love you. And then our voice for actual like speaking voice and phonetics and stuff like that was a whole separate class that we had to do, which was super. Like I had never done anything like that. I had very little training going in. I sort of did my high school drama class and then shows, and that was it. I had no professional training. And so it was really great to get all of that in school. Like there were electives, like I got to Meisner, Lecoq I tried, devising, I took an elective and all of that. So I really got to dip my toes into a lot of different acting styles and show styles. That's not a word. But yeah, so it for me, it was, you always take acting every semester and then it sort of shifts and changes and becomes more difficult and you learn more technique as you go. They always said it's like a toolbox. So you come in freshman year with an empty toolbox and every semester you're sort of adding different things to this toolbox that by the time you graduate, you can look at it and go, well, that doesn't work for me. And I really didn't like that, but I really like this and I like this. And if I did that like this, and then you have your own little mini kit now that is basically designed for you because you figured out what works and what doesn't for you.
Did you do a lot of mask work in school? So for Greek, I know there's a classical Greek mask where it's like basically you're fully covered from head to toe. You have like garbs and the big giant mask and big hands and stuff like that. Was that while you were doing school as well?
No, we did very little mask work. Like even in my Lecoq class, it was just very beginner, like Lecoq stuff. Because for the Greeks and Shakespeare and that sort of time at school, that was in a class called Suzuki. And Suzuki is a form of physical theater that is taught at Long Island University. And I believe it's only like the professor who teaches it, Maria Porter, she got permission from the inventor and the creator, Tadashi Suzuki, of this method. She trained with him and then was one of the first people to get his permission to teach it in America. And then she took this very physical training style and then she sort of morphed it into her own sort of using Stanislavski in and of itself, because her idea was, okay, why are we applying Stanislavski to the Greeks and Shakespeare when that was written way before Stanislavski ever came along? And plus, a lot of the Shakespeare and the Greeks and stuff, there's no subtext. And a lot of Stanislavski's figuring out what's behind the text. What am I getting at? Like, what are my obstacles? All that sort of stuff. And so she created this sort of physical way of training us that we can not only just use more than our faces when we act, so that we're fully engaged and present in all of ourselves, but also applying this technique to works written that didn't have Stanislavski at the time to help us really dig deep and get under those texts and really sort of delve into all that. So we didn't necessarily do the traditional acting style, but it was very physical and very athletic. And it was one of my favorite classes, or one of the classes that I really learned a lot about myself, because I get in my head a lot. That's my big problem. And so letting that go and getting into my body and trusting my instincts was really helpful.
We had a similar style of training at Windsor. We had the City Company. They like have mastered the Suzuki technique and viewpoints, and they would come in every summer and like do like a 2-week workshop with people. And Jayed Arazia, who is, I believe, teaching at the University of California, he came and directed one of the shows at Windsor, and I worked on that show, and that's how I was introduced to the Suzuki technique as well. And like, you're totally right. It really frees you from like getting in your head and like really just putting yourself in that body. And like some of the most fantastic training I've ever been a part of is using Suzuki. Yes. Oh yeah. we changed the song to Hey Ya. Did you stomp to Hey Ya?
We always stomped at the end of the year. Oh my God, Lars is like, what is stomp? We stomped to Lady Gaga. If you haven't stomped to Lady Gaga, have you stomped? It's amazing.